In this lecture, we're going to be talking about ungulate nutrition. When we're talking about ungulates, these are the animals that we are talking about this particular section. They include things like zebra, rock hyraxes, rhino, hippo, giraffe. But as you can see, they're kind of very purposefully split down the middle here, where you have giraffe and hippo on this side, right hand side, and zebra, dassies, and rhino on the other. And that's because the different herbivore species or different ungulate species have got different approaches when it comes to dealing with their food and digesting their food. The ones on this side are largely ruminants, and the ones on this side are what we call non-ruminants or hindgut fermenters. They have a foregut or ruminant stomach, and that it will be the examples there would be things like kudu, giraffe, cows, and so on. Let's have a closer look at ruminants versus non-ruminants. Well, first of all, the whole process, if you are an ungulate, you need to have some what we call symbiotic gut bacteria to assist you in the breakdown of the plant material. This is because no mammals possess the enzyme, it's called cellulase, that is required to break down plant material. So what ruminants and non-ruminants do is they expand the help of symbiotic gut flora or bacteria and protozoa that have the enzyme cellulase in order to break down the plant material. And the way that they do this, both groups, ruminants and non-ruminants, they will use the process of anaerobic fermentation. In the case of the ruminant, this fermentation of the plant products takes place largely in the rumen, and this happens before the small intestine. So basically, ruminants are able to absorb the products of the fermentation, very important fatty acids, volatile fatty acids that are produced during this process, but also important levels of protein in terms of the digestion of various microorganisms. Importantly for a ruminant can, as many of you know, re-chew its food, so it's able to regurgitate and chew what we call packages of cud, and then swallow these again, and this allows the ruminant to make the fragments of its food, its plant material, smaller, so it's able to increase the surface area to volume ratio that the microorganisms are able to act on in terms of the plant material that's swallowed. So it's able to get more out of its food, basically. And then thirdly, ruminants are able to recycle urea because of the process that they utilize in terms of a foregut digestion process. They're able to recycle that urea, which provides an important protein source for ruminants. And that means that largely ruminants can survive better or survive on lower quality forage because they're able to eke out as much from that food as possible. Whereas non-ruminants, if you think about it, their fermentation happens right towards the end of the process. And so there's very little chance for them to obtain recycled urea and other important byproducts of the fermentation of plant material. Now, some non-ruminants utilize a strategy known as coprophagy. And coprophagy means to eat your own feces. And a good example would be in some of the lagomorphs or the rabbits. Rabbits produce two types of fecal pellets, these hard ones that you can see over here, and then they produce these very sort of darker, softer pellets. You can see both are joined together. And what these animals do is they essentially recycle their gut flora. So they produce these two types of pellets. These are the hard, dried out ones, and these softer ones over here obtain many of the microorganisms that they require to keep their fermentation of their food. Remember, these are hindgut fermenters, so it happens in the cecum, to reseed the bacteria and protozoa that are needed to maintain the digestion of the plant material that they're using. Obviously, this is not a strategy utilized by all non-ruminants, but this is one that is used by some species of rabbits. So when it comes to ungulate feeding categories, we can broadly classify the antelope into recognized feeding categories, okay? And this is dependent on their feeding styles. It's got much to do with the size of their muzzles, so the size of their mouths, and also whether they are ruminants or non-ruminants, and where the habitats that they will utilize. So when it comes to species like buffalo, they have very broad muzzles and are very large ruminants, and so they are considered bulk grazers. We then have other species that have much narrower muzzles, like these blesbok, and they are essentially selective grazers. They will select certain types of grasses. We then have browsers, species like bushbuck and kudu, and then mixed feeders, so species like impala. These are all ruminants, by the way, these four species shown here. Impala are mixed feeders. They'll feed both on browse and graze. They've got very small, relatively small muzzles, but they will feed on both and often live along the edges of grassland and thicket areas. We can also have those that are more selective in their nature. So we can have selective mixed feeders like this common duiker over here on the left. And then you can have selective grazers or browsers. The giraffe is an example of a selective browser, and you've just seen the blesbok, which is an example of a selective grazer on the previous slide. You get non-selective mixed feeders, species such as impala. They're not terribly selective. Mixed feeders. You have non-selective grazers, which are often species like buffalo and also species like zebra. And then you have large mixed feeders, okay, and grazers. Large mixed feeders are species like eland. Large grazers can include species like buffalo and also, in some instances, zebra. So ungulates can fall into both categories, or a couple of categories.